This is Shiv. Today I'm going to be going through the week ahead presentation. This is for the week of Monday, October 19th to Friday, October 23rd. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So they're really pushing for the stimulus deal. The weekend news is reflecting a greater push towards the stimulus deal. The question is how much? Seeing several amounts being thrown out there, we ask ourselves, what does the market want to see? So something I want to take a look at right now is the headlines for the week. So, the first one we want to take a look at: Pelosi shifts deadline if Trump wants pre-election stimulus. Pelosi set a Tuesday deadline for more progress with the White House on the fiscal stimulus deal before the election. Stock futures are rising as traders weigh risk in coronavirus cases, which we'll get to in a second, and the U.S. stimulus talks. So just more buzz around stimulus. And then the last piece of news here that I wanted to take a look at: the U.S. is staring down a substantial third wave of coronavirus cases, and the graph I wanted to reference right here are the daily new reported cases, and this is a 7-day average. You can see here that we are above the 7-day average in the last few weeks here of the month. So, monitoring that, taking a look at COVID cases, and alongside the stimulus deal, and seeing how, the sentiment is being priced in. So, jumping right into the macro indicators, you can see here on the right hand side that we have a sector breakdown. We have big tech really just leading the storm here, energy lagging, healthcare, financials lagging, and tech pretty much leading the charge here. On the top right hand side, we see a market sentiment indicator. We can see that we were at extreme optimism, then we've dropped off into this neutral sort of zone. And then below that is the composite market risk indicator showing big money, whether they're risk on or risk off. We can see we're sort of at a neutral point here, coming off that risk on period, and now we're sort of, in that neutral, still in risk on territory, but just more into that neutral area. You can see risk on increasing risk appetite. Some more macroeconomic stuff, looking at fear and greed index over here on the bottom left, you can see it's sitting at 60, kind of a neutral number, and the scale is between 0 to 100 for anyone wondering. Above this, we have the options buyer sentiment group. We have extreme bullish sentiment in the options buying flow, which is, I'm going to be going over my own scans on that in the next slide. Underneath that, we have the insider transactions ratio, which this week was a ratio of 17. And you can see right here, that's the key for that. Readings under 12 are bullish, readings over 20 are bearish. So right again, kind of in that middle area, you could say. Okay. And then all the way to the right-hand side is an excerpt of the NDR Daily Trading Sentiment Composite. You can see that the current daily sentiment reading is 73.33. It was 57 last week. And there's the table for that and so on. Next up is the heat map. So looking at the heat map here, this is for the week. This is for last week's data. You can see on the bottom left-hand side that you do have financials lagging. And, as we referenced the graphic with the sentiment on different sectors, we saw big tech is really leading the charge here. And that sort of, proves the case according to the heat map. To me, it looks a little bit mixed. As an overall, more of a broader approach, it kind of looks a little bit more mixed. But you have stocks like Apple and Microsoft, Google sort of leading with these sub 2% gains. I think an interesting one here, actually, now that I take a look at it, is Costco. Costco up 3.5% on the week. Pretty interesting. AT&T and Verizon down before earnings. So that's interesting because they're reporting this week. Jumping into the option sentiment for this month, you have unfiltered results at the top. Bullish flow sentiment, 0.82 put call ratio. And then the bottom result here is my filter. So same thing, we have bullish sentiment again, 0.42 put to call ratio this time. Now, this week, options flow points bullish this week with the PC ratios at 0.83 unfiltered and 0.42 unfiltered. This week I filtered for far more aggressive criteria than I ever have before. This one is for the bottom filters are opening orders only, above ask hits, $200,000 bets and over, out of the money options, and IV greater than 50%. So the reason behind this was to get a better read on the spec buying before earnings season. I didn't see anything crazy in there. I saw a couple Tesla plays and so on. If you want to see the full scan, let me know and I can show you. But that's pretty much it for the option sentiment. Economic data this month, nothing too crazy. We have Tuesday, housing starts and building permits. Thursday, jobless claims. So I don't see any Fed speakers, so that's something to note. Here's the earnings calendar for this week. This is a big earnings week for sure. The names that I'm typically primarily looking at on Tuesday would be Netflix and Snapchat. Then on Wednesday, of course, Tesla, Chipotle. Chipotle might be a good trade. I didn't break that down later, but that is one to watch. I think that could be interesting. I think Verizon and AT&T as well could be interesting with the 5G movement and such. Southwest on Thursday, pretty good. So yeah, and Amex on Friday. So those are all some names to note. Here's the screener that I ran. You can see the names there. I'm not watching all of these names. I know DKNG is one of those good names to watch. But this week I've sort of honed into a couple different stocks. You got Peloton, DraftKings, Fizzly, Fastly, JKS, Run, Chewy, Cat, ALXN, and FSLR. So those are all the names that came out of the screeners. Feel free to take a look at those. So jumping into the SPY here, the SPY weekly high of 354 and the low of 343.13. We're watching for that move outside the weekly range. In theory, that should add a little bit of a volume spike. Now that we are much closer to the election, we're about 2 weeks out of the election. Let's see whether we get that volatility jumping, above or below the weekly highs and lows here. I think that this is going to be a little bit more headline driven. If they give us the stimulus bill, then yes, I think that there will be a shift in markets. Let's see what they do. So taking a look at the VIX and the ADD for last week, the VIX daily is showing no directionality here. It's a very tight weekly range of 29 with lows of 24. Again, watching for that weekly move outside in the VIX alongside the SPY. That's going to allow me to put on more risk when I see at least a pop or a drop in volatility. Okay, and then below that is the ADD, advanced decliners, for the week. First name that I'm taking a look at here is NEO. NEO's setting up at the high here, 29.40, all-time high, setting up this consolidation between 28 and 29.40. It has an ATR of 1.6. Not exactly the stock that I prefer to trade, but I think that this might be a good setup for, either we look for the fade or we look for the continuation, or they'll keep the consolidation going within this pocket or move it lower or so on. It has an institutional ownership of about 39%, a short float of 7%, R-vol of 1.7, average volume of 110 million. The next name I'm watching here is Tesla. This is one of the earning names. This is Wednesday after the close, if my memory serves me correct. Right now, they have an ATR of 23, beta of 2, short float of 7.7%. Something I noticed was this has decreased a lot over time. The short float percentage has decreased a lot over time. I believe at peak it was at 11%. Institutional ownership at 47%. It's getting half an R-vol, and its average volume is 72 million. On this, I'm watching for this reaction at the open or even in the pre-market of the 437 area. I think that on the downside, we could see 422 and then 400. And then on the upside, I think if we get through 457 and 460 with strength, we see 470, and then it makes its move back up. Now, this does have earnings on Wednesday after the bell, so that is one thing to note here. I think that there might be a little bit of hype that pops into it before the earnings. However, if we don't get it, then I think the earnings will speak for themselves, whether it decides to move up or down on those numbers. The next stock we have here is Peloton, so PTON. ATR of 7.5, short float percentage of 5%, institutional ownership of 71%, R-vol of 2.07, and an average volume of about 19.5 million. Headline came out on the 15th. Peloton recalls 27,000 older bikes for possible defects. It was causing some injuries, I heard, and it was defective pedals, if my memory serves me right. And what we have here is we have a sharp sell-off. What happened here was we tagged an all-time high in the towards the open, and then we sold off pretty big, 3.7%, 5-point drop on Friday. So, we're watching this for a drop of that 126.30 support, or possibly a retracement up halfway, and then, we'll see how the momentum looks from there. But otherwise, I think that maybe some consolidation could occur in this. Let the street digest the headline, and then they'll decide how to sort of move this for the rest of the week. Next name I'm watching is more of a long-term play and beyond. I just like this daily chart. I like how they're setting it up. Consolidation in that 182, 191 area. I think that this would be good if they put in the range there. It looks good for a downside play. And if it gets back up over towards this 190, breaks and holds 190 earlier in the week, then maybe we see that leg up towards 200. But on this one, I have no bias directionally. I'm out of all of my long-term positions in this. I was long this from about like 75 and then 83. I was long that. And then in this pocket, I had a swing trade up towards this 182 area. But, right now, sort of all cash and beyond, eliminating the bias that I have and just watching this for a trading opportunity. And the main thing I need to see here is the volume breakout, at least for 1 to 2 sessions before I decide to initiate another long-term position in this, whether it is long or short. Next name I have here is Amazon. So taking a look all the way to the far right side, Amazon didn't say that Prime event was the biggest day ever. I think there was a lot of hype that drew up the Prime Day, and now they're selling it off, sort of the sell the event, I guess you could say. This right here, don't look at this on the bottom, that's a typo. ATR of 115, beta of 1.3, short float of 0.7%, 0.65%, institutional ownership of 60%, and an R-vol of 1.3 with an average volume of 6 million. So what we have here is Amazon bouncing off the lows. The lows of 31.26. They pretty much sold this off half an ATR, right? They sold this off half an ATR on Friday, and now, depending on the pre-market, I would approach this for a trading opportunity, but these are the levels that I have set up. You have this 3400 level, then you have this 3250 area right there, and then 3162 and 3080 on the bottom. And then the last name I'm watching for this week is Netflix. So Netflix is another earnings name. Friday's action, they sold it off quite a bit, 2%, 11-point drop, coming right into this 528 zone. The inflection here, I would say, is around 549 is my inflection area that I have, and then towards the highs of 565. This stock has an ATR of 20, beta of 1, short percentage of 2.2, institutional ownership of 83%, and an R-vol of just about 1 with an average volume of 7 million. So this one looks to me like one of the more messier setups. Tomorrow maybe it comes in and puts in a retracement day and then continues to sell off before the earnings, or it does the opposite and takes a U-turn perhaps. But would approach this closer to the open. I know that Netflix doesn't really have many pre-market moves as far as I've seen. They don't move too much in the pre-market, especially as of recently. So let's see how they pan that out in the open. And then once again, just to recap the names that I'm watching for this week: NEO, SPY, Peloton, Tesla, Amazon, Netflix, Beyond. I think some other good contenders in there would be Costco that we found from the heat map. That might be one that's good to watch. And then the other two were American Express and, let's take a look, American Express and AT&T and Verizon. So that's pretty much it for this week's recap. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to subscribe. Have a good week, everyone.